Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to another video. In this video, I'm going to be talking about a stock that I found that is doing really well in terms of business efficiency, and they are currently trading below intrinsic value per share. And that stock is Allison Transmission. And we can see that this stock is outperforming the market over the last year. They're up a little over 20% in the same time period that the overall market is down about 20%. So they pretty much flipped the market return upside down. So good for anyone who's been investing in Allison Transmission over the last year. But basically in this video, I'm just going to get into some of the recent news that's come out for the stock, as well as look into their financial statements and then figure out the intrinsic value per share for the company so we can know if this is a good buying price to buy into the stock from a value investing perspective. So thanks in advance for leaving a like on this video. It really helps this video get recommended to more people on YouTube. So thanks for that, and let's get right into the news. So we can see in this first article that I found that an insider in Allison Transmission, particularly the vice president and general counsel, Eric Scroggins, I believe that's pronounced, recently sold around 22% of his holding in Allison Transmission. And obviously that's not a very good sign, because if insiders are selling shares of their own company, it could be an indication that they believe that the company might decline in share price in the future. But we'll see in this stock analysis whether or not that's true or not. We can also see right here that they talk about how Allison basically recently celebrated a 50th anniversary partnering with different Japanese vehicle manufacturers. So they definitely have a lot of operating history working with and selling to customers and partners worldwide. And then lastly, we can see right here that they were recently awarded a $51 million Department of Defense contract with the United States to basically help with transmission upgrades for the Abrams main battle tank for the United States Army. And so this work is generally going to be performed in Indianapolis and expected to be complete in December 2023. So that's $51 million worth of revenue that we can anticipate seeing booked on Allison Transmission's income statement for 2023, just as long as they're able to meet their performance obligations. So that's definitely a good sign to see. And so right here we can see Allison Transmission's balance sheet, basically comparing their financial position for September 30th and December 31st, 2021. During that time period, total assets are up from $4.4 billion to about $4.5 billion. And we can see the vast majority of their business is financed by long-term debt. They have $2.5 billion worth of long-term debt, which makes up their total $3.8 billion worth of total liabilities. And then they only have around $700 to $800 million of total stockholders' equity. Right here, this is their income statement, and they've had some pretty impressive earnings growth year over year for the fourth quarter of 2020 or the third quarter of 2022 compared to 2021. We can see that net sales are up from $567 million to $710 million. So that's an increase of around 25% year over year for their top line net revenue. And then for their bottom line net income, we can see that's increased from $94 million to $139 million year over year for the quarter. And so that's an increase of around 47% year over year, meaning their top line revenues have increased, but their cost of revenues and of operating their business have actually decreased. And so as a result, their net income has increased even faster than their revenue has, which is obviously a very good sign. Then lastly, we can see diluted earnings per share is up from around 89 cents per share to $1.45 per share. So that's an increase of around 63% year over year, which means not only has their income increased more than their revenue, but they've also been buying back shares during this time period, reducing their total shares outstanding, which is why their diluted earnings per share increased even faster than their earnings for the entire company. So that's definitely also a very good sign to see. A lot of positive green flags for Allison Transmission's income statement. And so right here, this is their cash flow statement comparing the first 9 months of 2022 to 2021. And in the first 9 months of 2022, they've had operating cash flow of around $433 million. And of that, in the third quarter, around $207 million came just from the third quarter alone. And that's up from around $196 million year over year. We can also see in their financing activities that they've repurchased a ton of common stock, of around $216 million worth of common stock. About $109 million worth of this was repurchased in the third quarter. And so that accounts for around 3% of their outstanding shares that they basically just repurchased in one quarter. So that's a ton of value returned to shareholders, definitely contributing to increasing their share price over the long term. And then lastly, right here, we can see dividend payments. They've paid out around $61 million for the first 9 months. And it was actually coming out to a dividend per share of around 21 cents per share. And they're definitely looking to increase that dividend in the future. So positive earnings growth, positive revenue growth for Allison Transmission, and a pretty healthy cash flow statement with a ton of value returned to shareholders through dividends and share repurchases. So definitely a lot of good signs here. Now I want to look at this discounted cash flow model to figure out the intrinsic value per share for Allison Transmission. Yahoo Finance is estimating that this company is going to grow at around 13% for the next 5 years, compounded annually. So I was conservative and I cut that value in half to 6.5% for the next 5 years after that. They had around $460 million worth of free cash flow in 2021. And after you subtract the debt from the cash on their balance sheet, they have a net debt position of around $2.3 billion, and they currently have around 92 million shares outstanding. And so with these metrics in mind, the intrinsic value per share for their company comes out to be around $64 per share, with a 30% margin of safety of $45 per share and a 50% margin of safety of $32 per share. And so basically that means that the current share price of $41 per share is a pretty good buying price based on these growth rates of 6.5% to 13% for the next decade, because it means they're currently trading at a 30% margin of safety, basically of around $40 to $45 per share with the current free cash flow and balance sheet numbers that they currently have. So definitely not a half bad buying price at all. And so we're going to compare them to some of their competitors to see how they rank up here. We can see I'm comparing them to Lear Corporation and also Borg-Warner, which I actually did another video about earlier this week. And we could see from that video that Borg-Warner was also trading below intrinsic value, and Allison Transmission, as we just saw, is trading below intrinsic value per share. But Allison Transmission's financial ratios are far more impressive than Borg-Warner's. We can see they have a very dominant gross profit margin of around 45% compared to 7% for Lear Corporation and 19% for Borg-Warner. Then they have a net profit margin that's completely blowing their competition out of the water at around 18% compared to 1% and 3% respectively for Lear Corporation and Borg-Warner. And then a return on assets of nearly 10%, which is beating out 2% and 3%. So across the board, Allison Transmission looks like the buy from a competitor analysis perspective. And then we can see from an intrinsic value analysis that they are trading at around a 30% margin of safety right now if they're able to maintain growth rates of around 13% for the next 5 years and 6.5% after that. So all in all, we've seen positive earnings growth, positive revenue growth year over year, a strong cash flow statement with a ton of value returned to shareholders. They repurchased around 3% of their outstanding shares in the third quarter alone, so that's definitely a lot of value. Their stock price is outbeating or outperforming the market over the last year, and we saw that from a financial ratio perspective. They're blowing their competition out of the water with better profit margins and better return on assets. Not to mention that we also saw that they previously secured a $51 million Department of Defense contract, and they have had a really good operating history working with partners and other automobile companies around the world. But that being said, we saw here that one of their insiders recently sold shares, so they could know something that we don't. But after looking at this stock analysis, it seems like Allison Transmission is positioned pretty well to increase their stock price and their earnings in the future for 2023. So I'm not too sure what to think about this stock right now. It's simply because of this insider trading. Probably have to do a little bit more research into that. But aside from that, I'll probably just be keeping my eye on this stock for right now. Maybe buy into it if it falls closer to a 50% margin of safety. But I'd love to know what everyone watching this video thinks about Allison Transmission. Is it a good buying opportunity right now at the current share price? Let me know in the comment section down below what you guys think. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like on this video, and I'll see everyone in the next one.